Welcome back into the film room, the second film room this week, Anthony. Welcome
hmm
back to the show. Welcome back, everybody, to the film room. Another special episode, another scouting episode. You guys loved it. It was a great turnout last week. So we wanted to bring you some more content leading into the divisional matchup with the Chiefs. Anthony, let's freaking go.
Dude, such a big week that we had to do two film rooms, right? Like we did the first film room on Tuesday in our normal spot, and then it was like, should we do another scouting one? And exactly like you mentioned, so many positive reviews from everybody last week in terms of how we presented that Bills Patriots wildcard game. So we're back again to do it for Bills Chiefs. And I don't know, premier game of the weekend for sure. Arguably the premier game in the NFL this year. Two of the top teams, and everybody knows what this means for the Bills and for the Chiefs. These two teams don't like each other. The fan bases don't like each other. They're getting into arguments over the stupidest things on social media. Not that you really need a lot of, spark to get into an argument on social media, but man, like tensions are high, emotions are running high. We're feeling it. We've all been putting in a ton of work, and here we are for another film room to add some insight into, how to attack the Kansas City Chiefs, because this is a huge game. Like this is not the AFC Championship. This is a divisional round, but for all intents and purposes, you could make the case that this is the AFC title game, and the winner of this game will go to the Super Bowl. And anytime you got a game like that, there's massive implications and massive things on the line.
Yeah, it's a game that, like you said, we kind of wanted to save for the AFC Championship game. But,
Yeah.
I mean, the Bills have slayed one dragon already in this playoff. Obviously, exercised the demons over Bill Belichick and the Patriots. And so they got another matchup against the Chiefs and Patty Mahomes, Steve Spagnuolo, as someone mentioned in the chat room. Another tall task ahead. I mean, one of the best coached teams, one of the more aggressive, modern type teams. There's a lot to prepare for on both sides of the ball. And so we're going to try to, bring you some stuff here in the film room that we want you to pay attention to, just like we did last week against the Patriots. And on the defensive side of the ball and what the Bills are going to do, I'm going to be taking that this week. Anthony's going to be taking the offensive side and how the Bills should attack the Chiefs defense for the most part. And of course, we have some analytics, we have some film, we have some fun and engagement because you guys are all here joining us in the film room. Get a quick roll call from everyone. Let us know where you're tuning in from. We do appreciate you guys joining us this Thursday night in the film room. So, Anthony, with that said, man, Bills are going on the road, going into a really awesome environment, one of the loudest and better fan bases across the NFL. What are your initial thoughts overall going into this game on the road?
I'm so anxious. Like, I hate Kansas City. And they're such a good team, and it's an intimidating environment. Arrowhead has one of the, largest capacities for NFL stadiums out there, and hostile environment against a good team with arguably the best quarterback in the NFL, tons of weapons. You mentioned the coaching staff. Andy Reid, we know his background. Steve Spagnuolo, we know his. I don't understand how Eric Bieniemy, the Chiefs offensive coordinator, is still not a head coach at this point. The fact
I haven't seen his name out there at all for even interviews.
No,
It was kind of odd, right?
He got to the final steps last year, I think for Houston or one of the other teams, but then it was one of those, like, the team that he made it to the finals wanted to get their head coach in earlier, and they didn't want to wait for Bieniemy to be done with the Super Bowl, I guess.
Yeah.
But I feel like Eric Bieniemy is the type of coach you wait for because he's phenomenal in so many ways. So they've got continuity in their coaching staff in addition to what they can do on the field. It's going to be a heavyweight fight. Like, these two teams both present matchup problems for one another. The Bills have Tre'Davious White out, but they have Matt Milano back. The Chiefs are a different team than we saw in week 5. So you can almost not completely throw out week 5, but it's not the same. I know a lot of Bills fans are coming in and thinking, well, we beat them like 38-20 in week 5. This is going to be another cakewalk. They're a different team. They're a different animal. The Bills want this one. The Chiefs want this one. And I'm excited, but I am tremendously nervous, tremendously anxious. Much like last week, like, I didn't want to lose to the Pats and have the all off season of like being like, we lost to the Pats. I don't want to have another off season of being like the Chiefs. And people are talking like the Allen Mahomes rivalry. This is the new Brady and Manning.
I hope.
I do. That would be sweet. But I don't want Josh Allen to be the Manning out of that side.
Yeah.
That's not what I want. So there's so much on the line here. But again, not to like play it to downplay, but it's also so like exciting. Like, we've been waiting for this so long as like
Yes.
Bills fans, like to have games like this and playoff moments like this instead of just like normally do. What would we be doing? We'd be like, all right, 11th pick in the draft. Who do we want the Bills to take?
I'd
Let's
be
scout some
scouting
people.
Senior Bowl guys right now.
Yeah.
That's what I would be doing. So I let our national scout, Russell Brown, know. He was hitting me up, and he's scouting all year round. I let him know today. I'm like, dude, because he's talking about these guys he's going to be interviewing. I go, I wish I knew who you were talking about right now, because I've watched some guards a few weeks ago when I had some downtime, but aside from that, I really am not caught up on the draft stuff. So yeah, normally we'd be, digging into the NFL draft already, and thank God we're not.
Yeah.
Instead, we are doing some scouting for the Chiefs game here this weekend. So let's kick this off. Let's get into some stats, some things from the top about what we're going to be paying attention to. And we're going to start with some of the stuff that I kind of brought up as far as the Chiefs offense. And we're going to start right off the top with how the Bills played them in week 5. And it was a game in week 5. Obviously, the Bills came out on top, but a game the Bills didn't blitz Mahomes once. As you guys can see, courtesy of Pro Football Focus, they did not blitz him. They did not bring an extra man at all in that game, which it's not surprising, to be honest, because Patty Mahomes is one of the better guys when he is blitzed, and they have the proper outlets and security blankets in place on that offense, coached up by Andy Reid and Bieniemy, as you said. So that's not surprising at all. And the other thing is, kind of like Josh Allen, Mahomes is very elusive in the pocket and escaping and playing off script, just like Josh Allen, as we're going to talk about. It's going to be my main focus in this breakdown, and we're talking about the Chiefs offense. But, he did drop the back to pass 63 times in that game, completed 61%, 272 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. But as far as the offensive side of the ball from the Chiefs in that game, man, is there anything that really stood out to you that you want to see the Bills kind of carry over into this game in the playoffs?
My biggest thing for them in this particular game, and I'm loving that this is what you're really going to touch on here, is how they contain Patrick Mahomes. I think last year we saw so many times where the Bills were not maintaining contain and rush integrity when they were going forward and they're rushing. They let Mahomes escape, and he's the type of guy, much like Josh Allen, you cannot let him create outside the pocket. You cannot let him make plays off script. He's dangerous enough in script and in structure. You can't let him get outside. And then also, for the Mahomes piece, in going back and watching the Bills Chiefs film from week 5, they were so versatile and so multiple in coverage in terms of how they were presenting their looks, what coverages they were rolling, how diverse and how unique they were in their coverage, and also how well they executed. Yeah. Without Tre'Davious White, I don't think they get to as many of those looks in the bag, but they're still going to be able to do some things because they've got the all-pro best safety tandem in the world in Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer that allows them to do some things. But I'm really focused on how they contain Patrick Mahomes from, the front perspective. And then on the back end, what do they do in coverage? Because they were showing so many things pre-snap, rolling to so many different coverages post. There were even a couple times where they were doing things. I think I know this game pretty well, and I study my ass off to make sure that I do, and I played it to a decent degree, and I know. But I DM'd you a couple things. I was like, what's this coverage? Like, what's going on here? Like, they were just throwing anything and everything they could, and part of that has to do with Tre'Davious White. So I'm heavily focused on that side of the ball, what the Bills do on the back end, and how they contain and pressure Mahomes up front. And I think those two things go hand in hand. I'm not coverage over pass rush. I'm not pass rush over coverage. I think they're symbiotic. They have to work in tandem, and that's my focus on that side of the ball.
Yeah, and here are Mahomes' passing stats for the season, and you can see he was not blitzed all that often all year. 15.5% of the time, he threw 8 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and he was under pressure 31% of the time, and you can see that completion percentage, as is often the case, will drop a little bit when you are pressured. Only 9 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. So, yes, as you said, I don't think the Bills will be able to be as multiple on the back end of their coverages, but they have to do enough as far as disguising coverages, right? I mean, that's your show.
I didn't
want
to say
I'll
it,
do it for you. I'll plug it. Yep.
Appreciate it.
And spinning those coverages, because Mahomes has been in the league long enough, and he's so dynamic that defensive coordinators, when they played the Chiefs offense over the years, that's their Super Bowl a lot of times. That's almost like a resume builder. Okay, how do you stop Mahomes? So they're going to have to do some things on the back end as far as spinning safeties, spinning. Something that we've seen a lot lately is, seeing Micah Hyde near the box, then spinning out to that Tampa 2 middle of the field defender, dropping Taron as a deep half safety, like doing some different spins on the back end to get them to hold the ball, to get Mahomes to hold the ball, to make him, confused a little bit, but still not sacrificing coverage and only rushing four. It's something that you have to do when you're playing against Pat Mahomes here. So let's take a look at, the times that he was sacked, because this is a little an area in Sports Info Solutions that you can kind of whittle down some of the filters and stats and look at the Chiefs offensive line sacks by alignment. So as you can see, a zero technique. So like the nose tackle, there's only been one sack surrendered from that position over the center. The 3 tech is where a good chunk of the sacks were surrendered. So you're thinking like Ed Oliver's position. Draymond Jones had one. Hayward had one. Autry and Harris. So if you look at those defenses, those are almost like 3-4 odd front defenses. So those are defenses that, kind of have defensive ends that are kind of like D tackles, maybe playing in a 4-eye or a 3. Those kind of guys, those bigger, stronger guys are getting to the quarterback a little more, relatively speaking, when we're talking about Mahomes and the Chiefs. So as you can see, 4 and 4-eye techniques, they've gotten 2 sacks against the Chiefs. 5 techniques, only 1. 7, only 1. And the big one are 9 techniques. So
I would not have guessed that.
No, me either. The wider techniques have given them, kind of fits here. 7 sacks against wide techniques. So you got to think about this too. We're going to see a bunch of them in some of the film I cut up. Those are wider alignments from outside linebackers, those hybrid type players. So sending a guy out a little wider, like, Jerry Hughes or Mario Addison, some guys with some juice, but that can stand up in 2-point stance as well to kind of confuse the defensive look. As far as the offensive line for the Chiefs goes, man, I know the interior offensive line has been talked about a lot. They're nasty, they're physical, they're young. They upgraded obviously on the left side as well. Is there anything on the offensive line that stood out to you as far as the Chiefs offensive line?
You know what? I'm glad you mentioned that. I had Matt Lane on from the KC Sports Network last night, and he talked about the interior of the offensive line, but he talked about how they were a little shakier on the outside, and they have not been pillars of strength on the outside of the line. And that goes back to obviously the Super Bowl and how, Fisher and Schwartz played in the Super Bowl, and then they come into this year, basically a brand new entire offensive line, and they upgraded the interior. But, as you showed that first clip, they've been vulnerable to a decent degree on the outside. And I think part of like just vulnerable, just not even, oh my God, what an amazing move. Just straight like bull rushes, speed to power, get jacked up, lose leverage, and get driven back. Like, look at that, like from the Chiefs right tackle there. That's just pure, I've lost. Like, he's not able to lock out. He's not able to arch
speed
back.
To power.
Done nothing. Like prototypical speed to power, losing to that kind of rush. And I was surprised at how shaky they were on the edges, but I guess I shouldn't have been, because now you throw up that graphic, and granted, like the 9 tech is pretty wide alignment, but seeing that they've had the most sacks come from outside alignments, in just playing the numbers, majority of those times those sacks are coming against the 2 tackles, your 2 bookends you got there. So it's been a nice job by the interior of the offensive line, Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith, and they signed Joe Tooney from the Pats, who's tremendous. But they've been shaky on the outside, and that's another reason why I've been carefully watching the practice every single day of Mario Addison and seeing what he can do, because I know the young guys can go. Mario Addison and Jerry Hughes are still the Bills' best 2 edge rushers on this team. As much as you like Groot or Basham or whoever, the best edge rushers on this team are Hughes and Addison.
And they've been kind of they've been managing the load of those guys too. Yep. And honestly, Addison in that Jets game, like, we're going to see some clips. Like, they had juice at the end of the year and in the playoffs. So
look at him. The third down on Damian Harris. He beats him to the corner to stop him from getting that first down. That's because he's got fresh legs in January.
He looks good. And so when we talk about the Chiefs offensive line, I know the Bills don't run a lot of that wide 9, but I think, as you said, depending on how Addison is, I think Basham, even Obata could play a role in this. And I'm not just talking about on the edge. I mean, we're going to see some clips, and one of the main portions of our breakdown here is going to be bumping those defensive ends like they did in week 5, putting Obata in at defensive tackle, putting Basham in at defensive tackle. This was, when the Bills lost last year in the AFC Championship game, this is an area that, Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane wanted to address. They wanted to get some speed. They wanted to get some youth, and they wanted guys that could finish plays and contain mobile quarterbacks and elusive quarterbacks. And so that's why they went out and got a guy like Rousseau, a guy like Basham, doubling up there in the draft, adding Obata, who had success against Mahomes from interior off defensive line positions when he was with Carolina. So when it comes down to is, again, containing Mahomes. And I think the Bills this year, they really haven't had to play many athletic, mobile type quarterbacks. You could throw Tannehill in there earlier in the year. I thought that last game of the year, the regular season, that against Zach Wilson, I think that was a good test just to kind of test the waters against those athletic quarterbacks. The Bills defense, a lot of fans last year, maybe not so much this year, were moaning and groaning about how the Bills always surrendered. They lose the edge there and contain, and quarterbacks were scrambling for first downs and big plays and big situations. But this year, they've only surrendered the 18th most scramble yards against quarterbacks. So they've actually done all right in that position. The touchdown percentage and first down percentages are actually down here. And I'm going to try to bring those stats up here. If you look at some of these stats, courtesy of Sports Info Solutions. So this is from 2018 to 2021. Top of the screen, you can see this year, 2021, they surrendered 217 yards on QB scrambles, only 1 touchdown, and 11 first downs, which, again, sounds like a lot. But if you look at the touchdown percentages on the bottom graphic, only 3%. And first down percentages are 33%. Those have gone down over the years. So they've actually been a little better in that role. So what are your thoughts on maybe even comparing the waves at defensive ends? Because obviously everyone hates Jerry Hughes when it comes to contain. Even Addison had his moments last year, the Cardinals game. Everyone remembers that. But I thought, getting a guy like Groot, getting a guy like Basham, and using Rousseau's kind of not cleanup mentality, but more of a contain rush, power rush kind of guy. He's not a up the field rusher. I think those guys do add a little versatility to containing scrambling quarterbacks like Wilson, like Mahomes.
I completely agree. And I think that's like you said, that's how this team was built in the offseason. The addition of Obata, the drafting of Boogie Basham, the drafting of Gregory Rousseau, starting with Obata and Basham, you've got scheme versatile guys who can compress the pocket from ideally multiple spots along the defensive front. And then you've got Gregory Rousseau, who is so raw, doesn't have pass rush technique and plan at this point, but what he does have is length and size and some speed to power to allow him to compress the pocket and use his length against quarterbacks and be able to keep them in the pocket, drive, compress that pocket. That's really what this Bills defensive line, I think what their, I don't want to say their rebuild or the reshaping of that line, but you had guys like Hughes and Addison who get upfield and get around edges. And then they brought in guys who could also compress the pocket. And I think that's how they're built. And as much as we talked about it all offseason, was this offseason where the Bills built to beat the Kansas City Chiefs? And I think they were in a lot of regards, with what they brought in, especially on this defensive front. And I mean, look at the impact that Rousseau had in week 5. He was compressing the pocket regularly. He had that deflection and interception. His length is a problem for offensive linemen and quarterbacks, as is F.A. Obata's. So they've got reinforcements on this defensive line who can do 2 things. They can compress the pocket, and they can use their natural size and length to clog passing windows with their arms, in addition to getting extra hands and, body parts on quarterbacks as they try to escape. So I think they've been built for this matchup. It's one of the reasons I feel decently secure. I mean, as much as you can against a team like the Chiefs and a QB like Patrick Mahomes, but I think they're much more set up for success up front this time around than they were at this time last year based on what they did in the offseason.
So, we just went over some of the scrambles by quarterbacks. Now, this is the big thing. It's Josh Allen and Mahomes basically 1 and 2 on this graphic, throws outside of the pocket. So you want to contain these quarterbacks. Obviously, both defensive coordinators are going over that. I'm sure we're going to talk about it when we talk about, the Chiefs defense versus the Bills offense. But as you can see, this is why, because Mahomes and Allen love living outside of script, outside the pocket. They make big plays down the field. You can see Josh, he has 12 touchdowns, 3 interceptions outside the pocket. And Mahomes has 8 and 6 for those stats. So it's something that, both coordinators are going to have to do. And what does that come back to when you're talking about keeping a guy in the pocket? Pass rush integrity, right? Pass rush lane integrity. And there are many ways to kind of get to that and maintaining that. Obviously, if you're a team like the Bills, you can't just run 4-man rushes all the time, because you're going to have to run some twists if that's the case, because But when you run twist, what happens? It opens up rush lanes for quarterbacks like Mahomes and passing lanes for Mahomes and Allen. So those are things you have to keep in mind. And one way that teams have kind of defended Patrick Mahomes is by using 3-man rushes. So here's some values on 3-man rushes. Defenses going against the Chiefs and Bills this year. And you can see EPA wise, when teams went to 3-man rushes against Patrick Mahomes, he actually was EPA wise one of the worst quarterbacks in the league. Shane, appreciate the donation, man.
Yep.
Some of these guys, I tell you what, and when it comes to the film room, like there are some, usual guys that are in the film room chatting with us and engaging and supporting us. Shane's one of those guys. You guys, you're an awesome dude. Thanks for supporting the show, man.
It big time.
So yeah, 3-man rushes, Anthony. Like this is something that teams have also tried against Josh Allen. You can see I threw that in there just to kind of compare it. He's actually the Bills' offense when teams go to 3-man rushes, as we saw last week by the Patriots. His EPA was 17.20. So that's one way to do it, right? Kind of rush with 3, drop a guy out as a rat defender, underneath defender, spying the quarterback. That's one route that the Bills could use against Patrick Mahomes. Who would you use as a spy, though, personally, if you were the coordinator, Anthony?
Oh, that's a tough one. Definitely A.J. Klein, because he's the most athletically gifted linebacker I've ever seen and the best linebacker on this team. Honestly, I'm not going with any one person. Just in my philosophy in general, I believe in versatility. I'm throwing multiple guys out to spy Patrick Mahomes. Maybe one time I'm letting Edmonds do it. Maybe another time I might have Gregory Rousseau drop out and not rush off the edge, and maybe I try to force Mahomes to that side and spy him with Rousseau. I am keeping a constant rotation because Mahomes is so good at identifying things pre-snap. The Chiefs are so good at creating alignments and personnel and using motion. They use motion 62% of the time, which is the second most in the entire NFL. So they use alignments and play calls to help Mahomes diagnose things pre-snap. So I don't want to get too much into a box. If I had to only use one person, it's tough because I want to say Tremaine Edmonds, but his impact in the center of the field from a coverage perspective, exactly. I don't want him to have to have that responsibility to himself. So I'm rotating it amongst several guys, especially on the defensive line. Give me Obata dropping out and doing it sometimes. Give me Rousseau. I love AJ Epinesa at it. I think his angle, I'd keep it to guys on the defensive line, play games, change it up, maybe from time to time do a second level or maybe third level defender, but I'd rotate it amongst the front to try and keep Mahomes guessing.
In that first matchup, the very first third down, they actually used Hughes as a spy, and he kind of lined up. He was mugging one of the A gaps over the middle. Later in the game, they used Obata in the same role, but he got pancaked because he got too close into the line of scrimmage. Addison on that really big fourth down. We're going to take a look at it. That really big fourth down. He was kind of like a rat defender, kind of holding contain on the right edge. So yeah, I think you're going to have to disguise it. And like I said, that's why I think guys like Hughes, Addison, kind of those, we've seen Hughes back in the day. He used to be an outside linebacker dropping out into underneath areas. And the Bills use those guys in those creeper pressures and simulated pressures where they drop them out underneath. So
we've seen Vernon Butler drop into coverage underneath.
Yes,
so
absolutely. So there are ways to do it. And I think that, the Bills are going to take advantage of that. I think it's there's a reason that defensive coordinators have done it a lot against teams like the Chiefs. And Coach Chapman says, we didn't have Milano in week 5. He will make a big difference. He's great at getting pressure on the QB. He is. But I think you talked about it with Edmonds. You have to be careful because they're going to need him in man-to-man situations. They're going to need him to lock down Travis Kelce. And so that either Poyer or Hyde could play over the top of Tyreek Hill, whether it's with Dane Jackson or Levi. They're going to need to do some different bracket coverages and on 2 different guys, obviously, in the same play. And I think Milano will be too important on a lot of those coverages, especially when they are selectively going to man coverage.
That's a huge piece, right? We just kind of talked a little about it with Edmonds in the spy conversation. You mentioned it here with Milano. That's a big thing to keep in mind, always when you're thinking of, from a fan's perspective. I feel like a lot of people just be like, well, spying with this guy, or let's blitz this guy. Plays are still about allocation, right, of resources, and how do you manage and allocate those resources. So if you send, again, even just basic, if you blitz a guy and you're rushing 5, that means you have one less guy in coverage. With it, that's just a basic level, let alone the roles that people play, the matchups they can impact. So if you're sending a guy like Matt Milano, He's a dog around the line of scrimmage. He's good at getting the
Mm-hmm.
QB, but you're sacrificing his value in coverage. And oh, I wish I had it. That next gen stat that came out, like I think he's
Oh
allowing
yeah, yeah.
like the least amount of yards per
Over the last couple
reception
of
since
years, yeah.
since like 2017. This year he's second amongst all linebackers. I think he's only behind like Micah Parsons or something. He's been unreal
Mm-hmm.
in coverage. Edmonds is part of the reason. Oh, I don't remember what film room, but you showed it a couple weeks ago why the DVOA for the middle of the Bills pass coverage is
Yeah.
so strong this year. They're like a top 2 unit
Mm-hmm.
because of Tremaine Edmonds' presence in the middle. So if you're sending these second and third level guys, you're sacrificing resources on the back end. That's what I mean. Good coaches have to do. They have to figure out how to manage and allocate those
Right.
resources. So everyone always has to keep that in mind that doing A means you're sacrificing some of B, and you can't just go one way or the other all the time.
Yeah, no doubt. So let's jump over to the film. And this was a clip that Marcel Louis Jacques had showed in the offseason, leading up to camp and whatnot. And it stuck with me because, not because of you're seeing Gregory Rousseau and Basham doing some extra work with the coaches, being filmed there, but if you look at the lines on the ground, again, when the Bills lost the AFC Championship game, one of the major things that came out of that game was needing to contain Patrick Mahomes, don't letting him make plays outside of script. Well, if you look at these lines on the ground here, these are so when they want to do drills, this is a pass rush contain lane. So you got to stay in your lane, and these are different drills that you do that coaches put their players through to maintain where the quarterback is setting up in the spot, and you can see it in the distance here. So this was something that I saw on film, from camp, and I'm like, I don't remember ever seeing those. And I went to school at Fisher, so I worked a bunch of their camps before I even started doing this, and so I know the land, and obviously went to a bunch of training camps there. I've never seen these type of things drawn on the field leading the camp, and I think it was just an emphasis here. And like I said, the drill being run by Rousseau and Basham has nothing to do with the lines on the ground, but it kind of made me think like, hey man, this is something they're stressing. And you heard the coaching staff talk about that all offseason, pass rush lane integrity. And so you're going to see it here in the next clip. Let me fix this screen here. So pass rush lane integrity. Here's the first clip. This was, again, a mobile quarterback, right, guys? Wilson late in the year. Look at the overload here to the right of the formation 3 here. Isolated defensive end off to the left side of the screen. And just watch how they rush here and how they maintain their lanes. So you see a crossover with Basham. He's going to come over this way and loop over here. And then watch the lanes that appear to open up. You see Addison's coming up the field. There's actually a nice little gap off the left side of the screen. But then look at the Basham and look at Oliver widen those lanes. And look how they constrict those lanes. Now, look, there's more balance there. Now Wilson's like, okay, maybe there's something coming up the middle. Maybe it's opening up the middle. Watch Ed Oliver disengage. And then everyone collapse on Wilson there. So pass rush lane integrity. It's something that I'm sure the Bills have been working on, Anthony, and something that's going to be incredibly important in this game.
It was in the forefront of their minds going into this past offseason with what happened last year against Mahomes. And I love this clip that you pick because it's almost like Basham and Oliver are like 2-gapping here, like just head up being like, okay, like, extending, and wherever Wilson's going to go, they're going to go. And this is so important in today's NFL. You're getting so many QBs who can move. The days of like the statuesque pocket passing quarterback are almost completely gone. Everybody can move in some way, shape, and form. And if you're just coming out of pocket with your rush angles and you're just coming off the edge and arcing around and just trying to get upfield, you can vacate an entire side. Or if you just fly upfield from the interior, you vacate the A gap or the B gap, and then it's just easy for a QB to step up. So this is, we talked about this in last year's film room going into the Ravens game in the divisional round, talking about you stop the Ravens offense by playing, as corny as it is, team defense and everybody doing their 1/11th. Proper contain against quarterbacks that can move and quarterbacks that can create off script like Mahomes. You have to do your job, because if you don't, awesome there from Brad Stevens, who came in. He said he was a coach. He was pumped to see some actual film on a channel. Brad says contain, get eyes in the backfield, keep separation, which is exactly what we saw on that previous clip. But everybody has to do it collectively, because against a QB like Mahomes, if somebody doesn't and somebody tries to be a hero and they vacate their rush lane and they don't maintain integrity, they ruin it for the entire front. And if you give up just one lane or one alley, it can wreck the whole thing. So you need contain, eyes in the backfield, and separation from the whole unit collectively. Everyone has to do their job.
Yeah, and so I talked about Obata using some of those defensive ends inside. I think it's something that the Bills are going to do. We see that here against the Panthers. This is one of his sacks from that game. You see him over in a 3-tech, as I talked about, one of the areas that the Chiefs have surrendered. You see him with a violent move right there, and then a big hit on Cam Newton. This is a pressure. You see Poyer coming off the left side there, and Hughes kind of bending over the middle. And again, I think that Hughes, this is not a game set for Hughes. This is actually a game probably set for Poyer or Obata. And Hughes is kind of coming over the middle here, that if, Newton were to try to escape here, I think he, will help that in that department. Or if he's going to get flushed out to his left here, I think that's where Hughes and Addison, come into play here. So using defensive tackles inside, I think, is going to be something to keep an eye on. And you talked about Addison and his health. I think he'll be fine. I think he'll play, but I do think that he actually, if he does play, he'll have a big role this weekend. Here's one against the Chiefs from week 5. And we always talk about, on the offensive side of the ball, setting the depth of the pocket from the interior offensive lineman, and the width of the pocket is set from the edge players. Watch how the Bills have 3 defensive ends here. You have Epinesa on the left side. You have Obata. You have Ed Oliver and Jerry Hughes to the right side of the screen. Watch how they run these twists here, and keep an eye on Obata and how the edge on the left side of the offensive line, the width of that pocket is shrunk right there. You see a soft edge, and he takes it a little too wide. If he shaved this, there's a chance he's getting a sack here. But you see the hit still on the quarterback from Ed Oliver. So Ed Oliver is using a power move. He's setting the center here and pushing that guard back and pushing the pocket back into the face of Mahomes. So these are the type of games that the Bills need to run with some of their speed guys. And I know the interior offensive line of the Chiefs has been really good, and they're physical. Trey Smith is a physical guy. Tooney as well. And then you got Humphrey in there as well. So those kind of guys are going to want to play power games. You got to, be able to do some things to shrink the width of the pocket, but also get that depth and push the pocket like Ed Oliver did here. Here's a 3rd and 8 play from the Panthers game, Anthony. You see the Bills, they have a bunch of guys up near the line of scrimmage. Now watch the power from Basham here. And this is why I think, like, if Basham dresses, which I think he will, and he's been kind of, stacking some games together here.
He's been good down the stretch.
Yeah, so I'm going to take these next few clips that are going to be about Basham and what he, and even Obata for that matter, can do. Watch the power here as Basham gets off the ball here, and how he compresses that pocket. And then you're going to see Groot on the left side kind of become that contained player. Bills are sending a pressure off the edge. You see Taron Johnson coming off the right side. And again, if Cam Newton were to escape or flush to the right, you got Groot in a contain role. You have Basham just eliminating that guy over the middle, just really pushing the pocket into his face. So you see the width of the pocket compromise. You see the depth of it compromised there, and you see the Bills able to rally and bring down Cam Newton on this play.
This one, obviously is a blitz, so it's not a traditional, 4-man rush, but this is what you want to see. And this is what we're talking about when we say compressing the pocket. It's not one person like, okay, speed rush upfield and you win. It's everybody collectively compressing, or what, like the verbiage you use, shrinking that pocket. And we say that in terms of the depth and the width. So you basically take that pocket that's normally supposed to be that little dish, right? That little arc, and you basically just bend the absolute hell out of it so it encompasses the quarterback and they have nowhere to escape to. That's what rush integrity is. And you have that on this play. There's nowhere for Cam to go. You have that contained piece from Groot. The Bills have done that a lot this year, and I really like that against mobile QBs, having that rusher who comes and engages and makes contact, but then he extends and separates and is basically just occupying his man, waiting for that QB to make a move, right? And then with the type of rush and game that you've got on the opposite side, the thought is, okay, this will flush Cam Newton like into Groot, but instead Taron Johnson comes clean, makes a play, and then Cam escapes out that side and we get the sack that way. But again, it's all based off that idea of compressing that arc, compressing that dish, and not allowing the quarterback any room to breathe or escape.
Yeah, and this is not something you always have to use on early downs, because I'm sure then the Chiefs are going to, counter it with some runs if you're throwing 4 defensive ends on the field like you see here. But watch Basham's power. It's not a play where he gets home, but watch him versus Tooney. And Tooney is one of the top cards in the NFL. Look at the power that Basham, right there. You see him again compressing the depth of the pocket here. And even Epinesa, I think he might have been offsides on this play, but look at him again, shrinking the width of the pocket. These are the type of things that you have to do as a defense, especially if you're able to do it with a 4-man rush and in using 4 defensive ends like we see here. Just something that is in the arsenal. Obviously, they use it a bunch in week 5. And here's that play I was talking about on 4th and 4 in that week 5 matchup. Bills are up 7 points here. You see Mario Addison again in the 4-eye technique, just inside the right tackle, and his versatility, it's something that he's done a lot of over the course of his career. So the Bills have 4 defensive ends here. You have off to the left side, it's Obata. Basham is the defensive tackle. The 2-point stance there is Addison as a 4-eye. And then you have Jerry Hughes. And just watch, again, him pop out. Addison pops out right here. And you see Mahomes going through his reads and his progressions, and he wants to take off and get outside of the pocket here. Watch our boy Jordan Poyer right here help take away the middle of the field. But again, don't let Mahomes out of the pocket. Look, he stops that edge. He's like, no. You're not getting outside me here. I'll take the hit here. I'll contain you. And you know what? I'm going to even stay out here. And you see everyone else. Again, yes, he's still got a pocket, but you're keeping him inside. And it makes it a lot easier for guys to plaster down the field. And eventually, he has to force it over the middle. It's 4th down. And that's when Poyer gets back there and he's able to get a piece of the ball to force a turnover on downs. This is the type of stuff the Bills have to do, especially on those money downs.
Yeah, you cannot allow him to. I mean, we've seen it so much at this point with Patrick Mahomes, right? He escapes out of the pocket and he either does his little run for a first down and extends the ball over the line, or he makes a play with his arm out of the pocket, a la what Josh Allen does a lot. And the Patriots tried to do this last week. They tried to contain Josh Allen, but they did it more from almost like a pure spy technique. And they were just, they used a lot of 3-man rushes. And as you showed earlier, Josh kills 3-man rushes, and they gave him too much time. And he also still escaped. So he kept breaking what they were trying to do. But this is the idea from the Bills, right? We saw the previous play a couple plays ago against Cam where you want to compress that pocket. This time it's like, okay, we didn't just get complete compression. Let's just make sure we keep him in that pocket. Let's keep him patting that ball. Let's keeping him having to hop and look and hop and look. He's used to escaping by now. He's used to either escaping and running for 5 yards on 4th down and 4, or he's throwing it to Travis Kelce or Tyreek Hill and getting like 20 on 4th and 4. So the fact that he's unable to, sometimes even that, right, that little piece, even though he's got a pocket like this, he still can't escape. He still can't scramble. You're still keeping him penned in. And if he makes a play with his arm, kudos to him. But this is where you rely on the strength of your coverage on the back end. One of the best back sevens in all of football with what the Bills have. You rely on that strength, make Mahomes have to beat you that way and not allow to get those cheap yards or those big plays out of script.
Yeah, and I think, Basham hasn't really had, for being a pro-ready guy, air quotes, with him. He hasn't had the season that probably a lot of draft nicks had thought he would, or his impact wasn't really felt early on. And we didn't expect it to, because we know how Bills front office and coaching staff really handles those young players. But
also, you and I weren't very high on him coming out either.
No, we were not. We were not very high on Basham, and we'll give him a couple of years, though. We'll give him a couple of years. But I do think one thing that we have seen throughout this year when he has been given his shot is his motor, his hustle. He doesn't give up. His motor runs hot, and he will throw 2-3 spin moves. It's one of his staples coming out of college, and you see him kind of take an inside move here off the right side, and then he's gonna spin back outside right here, and Lutulele almost thinks like, okay, Basham's going inside, I'm gonna try to switch and replace him out wide, but then you see Basham again use that spin move, and now he's back in a contain roll, but he feels Mahomes kind of stepping back up into the pocket, so he throws another spin move,
spin again,
gets back into the play. So it's something that shows up with him, but it's one thing like when you're in, especially off play action pass, where you have to process run to pass here, like when you get into the body of offensive lineman or two on this matter, like being able to disengage is incredibly important, however you do that. And these spin moves have worked well for him in these type of plays where he's able to disengage and try to bring the quarterback down. So that's something that he uses a lot, and we'll see a little more here as the film moves on. But even in this Patriots game, 3rd and 4 situation, you're going to see those type of plays where when he spins, though, he does a good job of keeping an eye on the quarterback or reacquiring the quarterback in the spot in the pocket here. And while he doesn't get home here, watch as he does that spin move. Watch how we kind of reverse his roles right here. So now he and Phillips are replacing each other. There's that spin move. Now look at the pocket and how they have contained Mac Jones. Again, he's not a mobile quarterback, but these are the type of and traits that will stand out when you look at some of Basham's film. Again, motor, runs hot, and his ability to and knack for finding where the ball is or where the quarterback is in the pocket. And it's incredibly important when you're talking about using a defensive end inside a D tackle against mobile or elusive quarterbacks.
Yeah, if you're going to do that, you need someone who obviously has positional versatility, but you need someone whose effort and hustle is always going 100 miles an hour, 100% of the time, and someone who operates with responsibility. I think even when Basham has gotten a lot of playing time this year, even when he wasn't, killing it or playing great, he was still responsible in his assignment and his role. He wasn't making the splash plays and he wasn't, flashing tremendously, but he was setting the edge. He was good at the point of attack. He wasn't doing sexy things or the top level things you'd like to see from a second round pick, but he was responsible. And now you're adding it in with a knack for finding the QB in the spot and a little more technique and a little more athleticism that's starting to flash. So now you've got a guy who runs hot with his motor, like you said, who plays responsible, who seems to be in the right position and does his job. Now he's starting to piece those things together, and his awareness is kicking up. His ability to play in the NFL is kicking up. Yeah, he's been strong down the stretch. I expect to see him in this game. I also expect to see F.A. Obata because of his skill set and his body type. And we're going to need to have strong performances from everybody on that front, and hopefully Basham can continue in that way.
Yeah, and here are the two young edge players kind of working together. You see a really nice arm lift here by Rousseau coming off the right side, and Basham nearly loses contain, but again, his hustle and his motor really keeps Mahomes in on this play and doesn't allow him to scramble for essentially a touchdown. So watch the move off the right side here by Gru. Nice little arm lift right there to get it, and you see immediately like he compresses the width of that pocket, and Patty Mahomes is looking to the right here, so he sees that pressure and he turns his back and tries escaping out the left side of the pocket here. Now watch Basham. There's a change of direction. Again, he's lost leverage on this play, but everyone's plastering down, and Mahomes is scanning the field, but looking to get back in the play, force the cutback. Groot also stays in the play. They're able to bring Mahomes down there. Another example, low red zone, important play. Here's third and 13. So you see the motor again by Basham off the left side here, and he never quits. And again, we're talking about Mahomes here and containing him, but again, Wilson is a really elusive player, a guy that from the shoulders up is not quite there, so he relies on his legs a lot. But watch Basham stay in this play. He gets chipped a little bit, nudged right there by the defensive, by the tight end there, but he stays in the play, and you see him. He's not just running wild here. He's containing right here. They're keeping him, totally responsible. And then you see him, the little spin move right there, and then he gets on his horse, stays in the play, makes the sack on Wilson there. So he's showing up, late in the year. Here's another play, flashing back, 3rd and 5 situation. And you see Obata, you see Rousseau, you see Basham, you see Ed Oliver, another power move from Rousseau off the right side here. And man, I love his angles to the ball.
They're so good, especially for a guy who's so raw and so green. It's tremendous where he's at in his rookie year doing that.
Right, and so you have Basham off the left side on a game here. Again, they twist here. Him and Ed Oliver twist. And you see, again, he's inside, but look, his eyes are up over the shoulder pads of the offensive lineman. He's waiting for Mahomes to escape the pocket. You can see the pressure coming from Rousseau, from Ed Oliver. And as soon as Mahomes looks to escape out the left, boom, Basham's there, Groot's there. Unfortunately, there's a flag down the field, but these are the things that Bills have to do. Throw some stunts and games in there, but when you replace someone, make sure you're keeping your eyes on the ball. And Basham and Groot are really good at that. And as young players, that's really some of the traits that really stand out for them.
Yeah, their motor, their hustle, their effort. And I think it's part of the reason they got brought into this team. We know Sean McDermott wants to build his defenses from the front 4 out. And ideally, in a perfect world, the Bills are only rushing 4 and they're dropping 7 into coverage. And when you're doing that, in general, you just have to have a solid rotation in depth because you need to be able to keep guys fresh. You can't just keep the same 4 guys. I remember tweeting out the stat. I think the Bills are one of only 6 teams who didn't have a defensive lineman with more than 60% of the snaps on the year. Ed Oliver was highest at like 57. The Bills want to rotate guys. They want to keep fresh bodies in there. And when you're playing against a quarterback who can keep plays alive and you absolutely have to play to the whistle against, you're going to get exhausted because, like you mentioned in these last several clips, you need to have a high motor, 100 miles an hour, 100% of the time, like Basham, like Rousseau. But when you do that, you're going to get gassed. So you got to bring in fresh bodies who will continue to operate 100 miles an hour 100% of the time. And exactly, that's a really good comment there from Dilly Dilly Dale. He says, just play disciplined and hard. They are coached and ready for this. That's exactly how they're coached. You play hard, play fast, play to the whistle. If you're too gassed, we're bringing someone else in. That someone else is playing hard and disciplined and to the whistle. When he's gassed, rinse and repeat. That's how they got to be. And those last several clips really highlighted that.
Yeah, I mean, again, rush lane integrity, discipline, as you just mentioned. And, they're going to have to bring him down eventually. A couple sacks would definitely swing things in the direction of the Bills defense, especially third and longs, getting them to third and longs. But there are some things that, not just relying on specific personnel, specific players. There's some things that coaches can do to, to contain quarterbacks that like to play outside of script, outside the pocket. So we're going to take a look at some strategies here that defensive coordinators use across the league, and some that you kind of saw on film already. But if you look at what they call flush left here, look at some of the the pass rush notes here. So if you look at the right end here, you see QB depth. It tells that right end to bull or their best inside move, but right at the quarterback, and don't go any deeper than him. You're going to see the right defensive tackle spike inside and be the middle pusher, kind of like you saw Ed Oliver do. The left defensive tackle is that B gap control, again, kind of like a contained player inside of the tackle, but controlling that B gap. But then that left end he's running a fish hook. So he's basically a run around on the high end. So it's something the Broncos used to do a bunch of with Von Miller, is have a low rusher and then a high rusher to contain Cam Newton in that Super Bowl years ago. It's something that we saw years ago, and that defensive coordinators use. And as I said, you saw Addison and Hughes do that a bunch of times. So he's that fish hook. That left end's that fish hook. And, he'll kind of get behind a quarterback. Most people are like, oh, he lost contain. Well, he's actually playing contain for both sides, because whatever side that the quarterback flushes out of, he can go get them here. So we're going to take a look at a couple of those plays, Anthony. Just some pretty cool rush strategies that I found years ago from an old Jim Schwartz playbook, actually, a Bills Jim Schwartz playbook. So this is an ode to him. So this is obviously the Chiefs and Titans. And you're going to see a nice power move from the left defensive end here. And watch the fish hook, the circle rush from Bud Dupree off the right side here in that wide alignment. Again, power move from that defensive end, Danico Autry. Look at the line he takes. He's using power right to the quarterback, right? And what's that going to do? That's going to catch Mahomes' attention, and he's going to want to flush out to his right. And he doesn't realize here comes Bud Dupree on the backside. He's able to rip the ball out there, but unfortunately, the Chiefs are able to recover. So cool little strategy that, the Bills could use. I'm sure they saw it on film here from the Titans.
Yeah, if you're running 4-man rushes, you have to play games, you have to run stunts, and there's so many ways. I love that you pulled up the previous graphic and then have led off with this clip, because there's a lot of ways. I think a lot of people just think of like stunts in games, and they just think like, okay, a defensive tackle is lined up next to a defensive end. One of them goes inside. Yep, there's so much more. It's not just like, okay, this guy spike inside and then the other guy loop around and go. You can bring, we've seen so much in the NFL now. You've got like almost like a slant from the left end all the way through the right defensive tackle, and the right defensive end will loop all the way around the left tackle to come after quarterback. So you've got different games. This is a really good job from Autry, who honestly, he's had such a good year for Tennessee. He was good in Indianapolis. He got away from them. Him, along with Harold Landry and Simmons, have just been problems up front. And then Bud Dupree is starting to get healthy from his injury last year. And you highlighted in there, like, you have good position, you've extended, you've locked out, so that man right in front of Mahomes can go wherever he goes, and then you're getting pressure around the edge. It's a nice way to contain, and it doesn't necessarily look like it, because it just looks like, oh, okay, like a speed rush and a fish hook, and there you go, guy arcs around the edge and it's a sack, but there's still some element of contain there. And that's what you can do with a lot of these games. You can win and confuse the offense or win with scheme and skill, but you can also use them to do that and simultaneously keep that QB locked in the pocket. And, that's the idea of what the Bills are going to have to do.
Yeah, and here's one, again, the Bills they hadn't done too much of this, but they also hadn't played too many scrambling quarterbacks, but very similar concept here, but the Bills use a two-man game off the left edge, and that really presents a soft edge. We always talk about it with Elam. When he sees a soft edge, he likes to take it. Last week he didn't. He stood in there and made those plays. So you got the soft edge presented by the two-man game off the left side between Hughes and Basham, and then watch Addison play it high. He's the high guy here. Boom. Takes him from the backside. That's the type of stuff that I saw in this game, and I'm like, okay, maybe this was them warming up, right? Maybe this is this is some of the arsenal, some of the tools in the toolbox that Leslie Frazier has that kind of save for the end of the year. It's just fun stuff because, as you said, more times than not, people think you're just, lining up, you're running 2 or 3 man games and that's it. No, there are specific rules for every player. Every player has a 1/11th, right? They have their own assignment and it all plays together, especially when it comes to containing an elusive quarterback like Patrick Mahomes. So here's another example, Anthony. This is what they call a poker left. So if we look right to left, we're going to look the right end, sell up field, wrap inside, look for the window, contain opposite. So he's not playing the contain off the right side here. He's going to be the contain off the left side. The right defensive tackle is the B gap control. Left tackle is a spike and middle pusher. And then the left end is running a fish hook and containing the opposite. So I brought a couple of clips that are very similar to that. It's very unique, man. And that's why I labeled it there. It's very unique. It's not something that a lot of teams do, but it's in there. It's in the arsenal with the defensive coordinators, the good ones across the league. So watch Dupree now. So he's in that wide 9 alignment there, but he is the one that it comes across the formation all the way to be that contained player. and this, I said this is unique because it's a 4-man rush. You see them drop out the edge guy that's over Kelsey, and they bring a guy off the edge, a wide guy. But look at the line he takes. Again, he comes inside of the depth of the quarterback. You see Mahomes, but right there. So he presents that soft edge right there, and that makes Mahomes want to, again, escape out the pocket this way, but he doesn't. And again, it's contained with a 4-man rush. It's a Vrabel is, when it comes to this type of stuff, he's really creative as a defensive coordinator here. And using guys like that, I don't know how many times we watch a lot of film, Anthony. You don't see much of this on film from week to week.
No, you really don't. Like, this is like you led off with. It's unique. It's unique to the point of Byron Pringle, number 13 for the Chiefs. He chips Bud Dupree almost as if like it's expected. Like, okay, look how wide he is. Let me chip this guy so that way he can't rush upfield. And the expectation, if you're on the offense, is like, again, because it's so unique. You're looking at how Bud Dupree is lined up, and you're looking at this front. You're not thinking, okay, he's probably going to loop all the way around and be contained on the opposite edge.
The wide side of the field, yeah.
That's not a thing. And to be able to execute that, you need speed and athleticism like someone like Bud Dupree. The Bills have that in their edge rushers. Addison can still go. Jerry Hughes can go. Groot covers ground very fast. Epinesa covers ground. You can even play games with Ed Oliver like that. You running these unique fronts, again, I love the idea of, I think people just think of games as very simple stuff, or they think of them as being designed to just get a sack. Yes, that's the ultimate goal, but you can also use them to contain and play mind games with the opponent. And the Bills are going to have to use all of that against a high quality offense like Kansas City. In Tennessee, you've several clips already. I watched that game a lot in detail. The Titans were super creative. They used a lot of simulateds and creepers. They brought different looks. They ran different games like you just showed. They pulled it all out, and as a result, they dominated Kansas City. But they had to pull it all out because of how good Kansas City is. The Bills are going to have to do the same.
Yeah, and you talked about the versatility of guys like Addison, and very similar, play here, again, presented a little differently. So you're going to see off the left side, you're going to see an inside spin move. You're going to power move from Harrison Phillips, and just watch how Addison buzzes across the field to the wide side of the field, just like Dupree did on that last play. So here he is rushing upfield. Now he's wrapping all the way around as Jerry Hughes and Phillips, again, kind of shrink the width of that pocket and present a soft edge. Wilson, 100% wants to escape out the right side here. Hughes recovers, and then you see Addison coming all the way across the field. And then we talked about it. How the Bills love to roll those defensive linemen for most of the year, how they manage the load and reps of guys like Hughes and Addison. Well, tell me that Mario Addison doesn't look fresh this late in the year. Week 18, look at him hustle all the way across the field to push Wilson out there. A really creative rush here. But, this is fine and dandy. Again, rushing 4, keeping 7 back in coverage. But on the back end, Anthony, we haven't talked about it, but we're going to wrap up this portion of the film with some coverage, because on the back end of that play, the coverage run by the Bills is one that we may see in this game. So you see Jordan Poyer and Hyde kind of disguising whether they're dropping into a 1 or 2 high look. But I want you to also pay attention to the other defensive backs, right? I want you to watch Dane Jackson to the bottom. Man coverage. Everyone's manned up. Everyone. Milano, Edmonds, Johnson, Jane Jackson, they're all manned up. Levi Wallace is isolated to the top of the screen, all manned up. You see Poyer drop down to the middle of the field as that rat defender, and you see Micah Hyde. Now, it could have been just a single high look, a cover one rat type call, but you see him reading Wilson. Either way, you see Hyde come over the top of that number one. So giving Dane Jackson a little help. These are the type of, the coverages that the Bills are going to have to run. A lot of third down and long situations this year, the Bills ran a lot of two-man coverage.
And
but
this is also
one second. But obviously, they can't just do that all the time against the Chiefs because they don't have Trey White. So this type of creativity, not just up front with the four-man rush and containing mobile quarterbacks and elusive quarterbacks, is needed. But you got to have this type of disguise and this type of help coverage, this type of bracket coverage from, again, they're all pro type safeties on the back end.
And I love that you picked this because, like, right when Mario Addison is starting to wrap, Wilson could either escape, or if he's looking to that bottom receiver at the screen, maybe he's like, all right, cool, I got one-on-one coverage, let me throw it up. But he can't because he sees Micah Hyde flash. This is a really good example of what we talked about earlier, the symbiotic relationship of coverage and pass rush. So if you are horrible in coverage and guys are open right away, oh, that's an awesome comment. Love Film Room University. If you're giving up, space right away and receivers have separation, quarterbacks can get rid of the ball right away. They need to have to second guess because of the coverage you have on the back end to allow the pass rush to get there. And this is a play, again, where it works in tandem. The game the Bills play on the back end allows the game up front to work. And one other thing I wanted to point out, Ed Oliver gets put into the ground on this play, like early in the rep, and he gets up and hustles his butt off to continue to drive pressure. This is another example. Whoever commented earlier, this Bills defense is coached to be disciplined and play hard. That's an example of it. Playing disciplined and playing hard. I got put down to the ground. And instead of just being like, well, whatever, play's probably over. Nope. He gets right back up, gets right back into the play because of what's going on. And because of what's going on, he's able to influence that play. And again, team defense, everybody doing their 111th, coverage working with pass rush working with coverage. We have to see this against Kansas City. And this is why, Erik, you pulled these clips, because it cannot just be the Bills aren't going to succeed on defense because of one person or one unit or one group. It is a 1000% collective effort. Everything works together. And that play right there was a great example of how pass rush and coverage can work together in tandem.
Yeah. So that's the Bills defense versus the Chiefs offense, and how they can, use some personnel groupings and roll some defensive linemen, some coverage stuff in there, and strategies on how to contain Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. Because they're going to go off. They're going to get their points. They're going to get the yards. You just have to minimize and contain them as best you can. So with that said, let's jump over to the other side of the ball, Anthony. And what do you got? Because you were the scout for the Bills offense versus the Chiefs defense.
I don't have anything. No, I've been really infatuated with all the matchups in this game because there's so many variables and so much matchup potential on both sides of the ball, right? And in looking at the Bills offense and the Chiefs defense, I focused on the run game. I've just been so enamored with this Bills run game, and then also within that, looking at the Chiefs run defense. So that's where we start here with this first graphic here, right? So the Chiefs run defense, they're 20th in rush defense DVOA, 22nd in power success allowed. Again, power success, for those who don't know, I hope they know at this point because I say it so much. Power success is the percentage of runs on third or fourth down, 2 yards or less to go, that achieve a first down or a touchdown. That also includes runs on first and goal or second and goal from the 2-yard line or closer. From a defensive perspective, that means they're allowing offense to succeed in those situations 70% of the time, which is 22nd in the NFL, so not great. They're 26th in stuffed rank. Stuffed rank is the percentage of run snaps that an offense has where they get tackled at or behind the line of scrimmage. So the Chiefs defense only does that 14% of the time, 26. So they're not making a lot of plays around the line. We look at their last 5 games, 125.8 yards per game allowed on the ground in their last 5 games. And 2 of those games came against the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are not tremendous offenses. And one of those games came against the Cincinnati Bengals, who only ran for 60 yards because they threw for 415 and just stayed in the air.
Geez,
yeah, unreal. They gave up 191 to Denver, 192 to the Chargers. Those are the 2 games allowing over 190 rush yards in the last 5. And then I also put it with their tendencies and what they like to do, right? So 72% of the Chiefs' defensive snaps have 5 or more defensive backs. They love putting 3 safeties on the field. They love having 5 DBs. They also go with a 60% light box, which is the 6th most in the NFL. Oh, awesome. Thank you so much. Dave is such a huge supporter of the channel. Awesome. Thank you very much for the donation. And, good question. How do they try and neutralize Chris Jones? Where do they attack weaknesses? And who may have a big game on the Bills? Because of it.
Cover it.
Dave,
we may be covering that.
It's like you're reading my notes, Dave. I'm not going to answer it right now because part of what I'm going to go over is that exact thing. So you've peeked into the future. Well done. And continuing here. So the Chiefs, 60% light box. That's the 6th most in the NFL. 31% 7-man box. That is the 9th most in the NFL. You add those 2 things together. That means 91% of the time they have 7 men or less in the box. Run at that. They blitz 26% of the time. 11th in the NFL. And then this last one, middle of the field open coverage. That's a nice fancy shorthand way of saying 2 high looks. So again, you got 2 safeties. So the middle of the field would be open because there's no single high safety. Middle of the field coverage there, 44% most in the NFL. Now, tie that in with the Bills' run offense. We've talked about it a lot these last several weeks.
Hell yeah, we have.
Yes, we have. We've been impressed. We've talked about the Bills developing this pivot. This is huge, and that's why I wanted to put this into a graphic. So I didn't want to read it. I wanted people to visually be able to see it and understand it, and it's because it's huge. Weeks 1 through 13, the Bills ran gap runs on 27% at a 27% usage rate. Weeks 14 through 18, a 48% usage rate, which was 5th in the NFL. In the wild card round versus New England, they ran gap runs on 54% of their runs, 2nd most in wild card weekend. But again, if you're just running stuff and you're not having success, who cares about the percentages?
Yeah.
So that's why I brought these other numbers. So weeks 14 through 18, again, when they were running gap 48% of the time, weeks 14 through 18, they had 809 rushing yards, which was 2nd in the NFL. And not to be that guy, but the Seahawks were first. And part of the reason the Seahawks were first is because they had like 3 60-plus yard runs from Rashad Penny that heavily skewed those numbers. So Bills, 2nd best rushing team from a yardage perspective, weeks 14 through 18. Devin Singletary, weeks 14 through 18, 375 rush yards, which was 8th in the NFL. And to be honest, again, not to be that guy, but if he would have had like another 50 or 60 rushing yards, he would have been in the top 5. So he had a tremendous stretch. And then Josh Allen, running QB, uses his legs, 763 rushing yards in 2021. Fun stat. I have another graphic that's going to show that even more in a little bit. And then to go with a little advanced metrics on the other side, the Bills offense, 9th in rushing DVOA on offense, 67% power success, which is 17th. So it shows they're converting in those 3rd and 4th and short situations almost 7 out of 10 times. Stuff rank of 12th at 16%. So they're not getting hit at the line in the backfield a ton. And then these are a couple nice fun ones as well. Josh Allen, 23 first downs converted via design runs. That is the 2nd most amongst all QBs. And Devin Singletary, fun stat as well that I wouldn't have expected, 21st in the NFL in yards after contact. I know I wrote yads, but it's yards.
It's yards.
Oh, yeah, I went with a Boston accent. Yads after contact. This is a big one too, right? Well, all the graphics are important. This one I discovered almost right before we went on air. I tweeted it out. So the Chiefs run defense versus QBs in 2021. If you take out Niels and you take out Sneaks, the Kansas City Chiefs have given up 392 rushing yards to quarterbacks, which is an average of 6.7 yards per attempt. That is the 6th most in the NFL. So that's not great in general, right? But why is it even more impactful? I'll tell you why. Because Josh Allen ran for, again, 763 yards in 2021, which was 25th in the entire NFL. Everyone, 25th in the entire NFL.
Not just quarterbacks. Yeah,
no,
entire
quarterbacks,
NFL.
Running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, anybody who ran the ball. Josh Allen had the 25th most yards in the entire NFL, and he was 3rd amongst QBs. Now, 2 caveats with that. One, Lamar Jackson was 2nd. He got hurt, didn't play a lot down the stretch. And also, Jalen Hurts was 1st amongst all QBs in rushing yards, but he had only 21 more yards than Josh Allen. He also had 11 more carries. If Josh Allen gets 11 more carries, he has the most rushing yards amongst QBs in the NFL. Granted, Lamar got hurt, but we put all those things together, right? We talk about how, I'm going to cough. Sorry. We talk about this Chiefs defense and how it's been different than week 5, right? And they've got Chris Jones back and they've got Charvarius Ward back. And Chris Jones is such a terror in pass rush.
Mm-hmm.
So Dave, he asked that question earlier. How do you attack Chris Jones? I think you attack Chris Jones in the way you attack this Chiefs defense. And this is still the Josh Allen offense. This is still a passing offense. I want to see the Bills run at the Chiefs. So I highlighted Chris Jones there in the center. Look at him. He gets double teamed. Look at him just get completely driven off the ball. Hard. You marked him right there. He gets driven off. Chris Jones talked about it with Matt Lane last night, who knows a ton about the Chiefs. Chris Jones is excellent on the interior in his pass rush, not so much in his run defense. Watch him get blown up. He gets blown up.
The thing that stands out to me here, too, is watch him out of his stance. You see him right here. Watch him out of his stance. Look how late he is. He's lackadaisical. Like his hands, there's no pop in his hands.
No effort.
There's no effort on this play. And you see the combination block to the linebacker. They get that vertical displacement that you outlined, man. Yeah, that's run right at him, right? And if you're thinking about this exact play for the Bills, you're thinking of Bates at left guard, Deion Dawkins at left tackle, and those two on those combination blocks have been almost as technical as you can be, where Bates is getting the hand leverage, Deion Dawkins is a driver, he's creating that displacement. These are the type of plays that the Bills have had success with, especially on this concept, right?
Yes, and running the duo concept, running right at him. Jones doesn't give that effort. He comes out high. He gives more effort in the pass, and the Broncos just maul him. And if you go back to the beginning of the clip, the sideline view, I want everyone just to focus on, Erik uses this term all the time, the vertical displacement. Look at the vertical displacement and look at how the Broncos reestablish the line of scrimmage. Just watch. As soon as this ball is snapped, they immediately move this line of scrimmage. Look at them just drive and look at the center. They are eating the Chiefs interior right there. And that's also a good way, right, to wear down pass rushers. You run right at them. You get physical with them. You wear them down physically and mentally and make them do things that they don't want to do. Here is another play. Again, we're focusing on Chris Jones. He's highlighted right there. You get 2nd and 10 for the Broncos from that might be the wrong clip there. Or that's the right clip, but the wrong verbiage, whatever. But they run right at Chris Jones again. But Chris Jones, this is a 3rd down. This is like a 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4. Jones is pure pass rush all the time. Watch how fast and how far he gets upfield and just completely vacates his gap. Look at that. Gone. And now there's a beautiful wide open hole for Javonte Williams to go through because Chris Jones vacated his gap, right? Continuing to run at him, making Chris Jones and this defensive front as a whole, but specifically Jones, making him have to play both sides of the offense, having to play run, having to play pass. Look at, he goes right upfield because he's thinking, okay, I got to get pressure. And instead it's like, I just completely vacated my gap. And that goes along with, we talked about, rush lane integrity from a pass rush standpoint with this Bills defense. You also need to have integrity from a run fit perspective, as we talk about all the time. But Erik, maybe some people don't know how important your integrity and responsibility is on run plays as well.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And especially a guy like that, as you said, he's a menace. Don't get me wrong. He's still a menace in the run game. You have Nick asking if that's typical. But a 3rd and 3 situation, you're expecting a pass there. So I understand why it happens. But when the Bills are in those 3rd and short situations like that, maybe that's why it's a good call to go to a play like that inside of him. Because there are times where he just wants to attack. I mean, that's what he's, really paid to do. And that's why they have some of those athletic downhill type linebackers to kind of cover and erase some of those aggressive up the field, rushes from Chris Jones. And as Anthony pointed out on this play, you want to pin him. You want to run right at him. You want to run right at Chris Jones off the right side there. Use not power. You want to use angles and leverage. And that's what you see the Broncos do there. And again, I don't know how, maybe he was just tired in this game or whatever. There's not much effort to retrace over the top of that block, but either way, that's what you want to do. Use angles and leverage. Don't always, if you're going to try to vertically displace him, you don't want to do that one-on-one with a guy like Ryan Bates or a guy like Darrell Williams. You're going to have to get combination and double teams when you want to run power or when you want to run inside zone. But when you want to, get outside, get off tackle a little bit, you're going to have to use these down blocks at the point of attack and use leverage and angles to get outside of him.
Yes, and it's intelligent offense, and tying it in with that clip before, he's so pass rush minded that when you're in a situation like a 3rd and 4 and it's like, okay, this is probably a pass, he's even more dialed up to pass. And you can play off of that and break that tendency and be like, no, we're going to run and we're going to run it right at him. And I like this one because, again, it goes in this theme. The Broncos did this a lot in this game.
How many yards did they rush for in this game?
191.
Yeah.
And there were a couple big runs, but there were a lot of them that were 6 yards, 7 yards, 10 yards, 9 yards. They kept churning out chunk yardage because they were winning on the line of scrimmage. They were more physical. It started with how they attacked Chris Jones, but it really was how they operated as a whole. You even get the puller on this one who starts to slip and fall as he comes around. Yeah, because the field is messy in this one. He starts to slip. Yeah. Ingram slips as well, and Gordon just reads it, bounces outside. Noah Fant is maintaining leverage. That's a piece too, right? Noah Fant had a good blocking game against these Chiefs edge players. No disrespect to Noah Fant. He is not the blocker that Dawson Knox is this year. You highlighted him right there. Knox is going to be a huge, important factor in getting physical with this Chiefs defensive line. That's the whole name of the game, right? Getting physical. You get physical with Chris Jones. You run at him. You get physical with this Chiefs line, and you run at him. This one ties in perfect with what you were talking about, right? So rush lane integrity. We kept driving it home. Here you go, goal line situation, low red zone. The Chiefs are in zone coverage on defense. But watch as they rush Drew Lock here. Look, what do? Vacate those lanes. You got your end getting too far upfield. Neither of the defensive tackles loop or come back and retrace to force to keep Lock in the pocket. They literally are asking him to run. Here goes your lane. He can almost go on either side. It's a choose your own adventure at this point. He goes left, and then to cap it off, the Chiefs in zone coverage vacate the complete middle of the field with their zone coverage. Yeah. So I talked about that stat earlier where they've given up the 6th most rushing yards to QBs this year. You can start to see why in a clip like this, because of their poor rush lane integrity getting up the field against QBs and because of their lack of responsibility in coverage. I love that you started to highlight it already, right? So 91, he's committed inside. His head is in there. His body's in there. He gets pinned inside. He's done. Now, that's not necessarily terrible, but the problem is 51 for the Chiefs, that right end.
The edge.
He's completely outside. So he gets sealed to the outside. 91 gets sealed to the inside. And that's why all of a sudden you've got this gaping lane for Drew Lock, and no disrespect to Drew Lock, but he is not the runner that Josh Allen is. Mm-hmm. And if you're going to give Josh Allen those opportunities, it's going to be problems. This one, a little different run for the Broncos here. So previously we saw a lot of downhill attack. We saw duo. We saw pin and pulls. We saw this physical attack mindset. Here, we just get an outside zone run for the Denver Broncos, a la the Terrell Davis Denver Broncos. But the Kansas City front, they get washed down so bad from the zone blocking here that it gives Melvin Gordon, this beautiful natural cutback lane, which is the first focus, right? The second focus is the god-awful tackling by Algerius Sneed, number 38, the first one who tries to hit him around the line of scrimmage. Then we get a horrible effort from Juan Thornhill, the safety coming down right here. Boom, bad. Yep. Tyrann Mathieu, the honey badger, who's deep. Ooh, he gets
stiff-armed.
Nasty stiff arm there from Gordon. Poor tackling, right? So here's the thing I want to mention too. I think, and it's been in my head a little bit as well, the Kansas City Chiefs, 2 years, back-to-back Super Bowl appearances, kings of the AFC, and they are kings of the AFC until someone dethrones them. I can understand if they have a little bit of that Golden State Warriors mentality from all those years where it was like, dude, let's just get through the regular season. Once the playoffs come, we'll flip that switch, right? And be like, oh man, it's like week 18. We don't want to play. Let's just get to the playoffs. And maybe that's true. But from what I've seen, you want to test that mentality? Cool. Run it right at them from the very beginning. Smack them in the mouth. Make them have to tackle. Make them get physical. Because their defensive line, they're not stout in the run game. And their second and third level players, they're not bringing it when they want to tackle him. Maybe they'll turn it up for this game, but I'm testing that right away if I'm the Bills.
Yeah, and this is one thing that goes back to your analytical approach to this game off the top of the show. Look at the box. 6-man box. But again, see, it's a light box. But what the Chiefs try doing is running a little run stunt here. So they slant Ingram in and they bring that guy off the edge. Well, as you said, Anthony, they just wash it down. They entirely wash it down. These guys get caught up in traffic, and this gap. I mean, look at the wide gap here, the
Huge.
entry point for the running back. As long as the running back, Gordon, is working through his reads from left to right and he can hit that backside cut, it's going to be a big play. He does, and he's able to get north and south there. And I love the little shout out to Terrell Davis because this is exactly the type of play he excelled at. So, yeah, light box, but they try to bring the seventh man down from the edge, and it's just not going to happen when you have a strong running back like that in Gordon. So that kind of ties it all together when you're talking about the Chiefs' run defense here.
And one last little thing on that previous play, you don't have to go back to it, but because again, 72% of the time, the Chiefs have 5 DBs or more on the field. So when you're running a stunt like that, the guy who's coming free, who's that alley player, is most likely going to be a defensive back, and he's going to have to tackle. It might be a safety or it might be a corner like Algerius Sneed. They got to bring the lumber and bring the wood, and he didn't on that play. Neither did Thornhill, neither did Matthews. So really like that from Denver. Here is another one again. Rush lane integrity. This time the Kansas City Chiefs are in man, so they're not in zone like they were on that red zone scramble for Drew Lock. But here's another big touchdown run for Drew Lock, and you see poor rush lanes, guys coming around both edges. They basically vacate the middle of the field. The second level defender goes with Melvin Gordon in man coverage, and the Red Sea parts, and Drew Lock just has so much freedom. And now, but here's another piece, right? So poor rush lane integrity, a Lock evades, escapes right up the gut, right? Look at the tackling. Look how many Chiefs are around. And just watch the tackling. I'm not even going to say anything. Just look at all the poor tackling. He should have been down multiple times. Poor angles of pursuit, poor effort. And again, Chiefs fans are probably going to watch this and say, it was week 18. They didn't care. Fine. But the numbers show that things like this have been happening to them all year. And what I love about this play as well, the previous scramble that I showed from Locke, their second, stringers and third stringers were the guys who were in there. Boom, you highlighted in there. Chris Jones is in there. Frank Clark, number 55, is in there. Number 90, Jaron Reed is in there. This is their starting defensive line unit.
Hold on. I'm going to interrupt you. Look at Jones.
Look at that. Look at it. Look at that.
What is he doing?
Not caring.
What is he doing right there?
No effort. No,
that's what we call a loaf. You get a negative on that play.
You do. You're getting called out. You're getting called out on Monday for being like, what is this?
Not if he's not going to catch him. I get that, but that's loafing right there. And as you said, the Red Sea parts, and it really comes back to the coverage they're in here too, right? Man coverage. And if the Chiefs want to play that man coverage, which burned them in the first game, the first matchup with the Bills, Josh Allen played really well versus man coverage because he has weapons. If this is the type of coverage they want to play, you better have better rush lane integrity than that, Anthony. So it's a great point on your behalf there, man.
And you know what? Maybe let's tie it in together with some more things as well. Maybe Chris Jones is exhausted because he's been getting run at for 2 quarters, and he's getting double teamed left and right, and he's getting pinned, and he's getting leveraged and angled left and right. So again, tie it all together.
And I'm going to tie it because, jog my memory here. So I wanted to look at some of the real quick. We'll get back to the film here in a second. One thing I noticed as we were looking at film was, how, as you said, some of those plays, you saw Jones and you saw some of those pass rushers, kind of tired, right? And one thing that I thought the Bills did really well in the wild card round is play with tempo. They got Josh. Someone mentioned it at the top of the show in the chat room. I didn't get to bring it up, but they played with tempo. They had Josh at the line of scrimmage, well above the 15 seconds of the play clock, allowing Dable to still communicate with Allen, allowing Allen to process the pass protections and the defensive front and structure of the front. And that tempo, I think that is one thing that we may need to keep an eye on. Do the Bills will they use tempo against the Kansas City Chiefs? Because if you look at some of the defensive tempo stats here, where is it? Where's Kansas City here? So Kansas City, they're ranked 8th in seconds per play. So if you look at where they're at, 27.41 seconds. So they're in the top 10. Teams want to use tempo against them. You can see it. It's going from 26 seconds, and it's counting up as far as the seconds per play goes. So teams want to use tempo. They want to go fast against them. So I know this could be a track meet. This could be a high offensive output type game for both sides. These offenses have the firepower. So, we talked about on the other side of the ball, and the Bills like to roll those defensive linemen. Maybe that plays a part in it. And the Chiefs wanted to play a track meet. On the Chiefs side of the ball, do they have the depth? Do they have guys that want to go all out on these plays late in downs, late in drives? We have to see it, because it seems like the Chiefs defense is attacked in that way when we're talking about tempo. And we showed a couple plays where some guys were loafing. Maybe that's one of these strategies that Dable and the Bills offense use against Kansas City.
And I like that. I think I love tempo. I feel like teams should also do it more. I love tempo in two ways. And the second way really isn't necessarily thrown into tempo. For me, I do it. I love tempo from like a play calling rhythm perspective, but I also love changing tempo and cadences at the line of scrimmage. Yeah. I love, different actions, a quick snap. I love trying to draw teams offside. Anything and everything you can do to make them have to add mental stress and strain and or slow them up physically because they have to think a little more instead of just flat out playing. I love that. And this last play here from Denver, big one, Melvin Gordon, 47-yard touchdown. This one is more just not any individual, but this one is about run fits and tackling. So Melvin Gordon makes a play. Shout out to him. He had a really strong game. But Juan Thornhill, who's played a lot down this stretch, he's reclaimed his starting role from last year. He gets put in conflict here outside of Frank Clark, whiffs completely. He can either get Melvin Gordon coming inside or Melvin goes outside. He plays the outside. Gordon cuts inside. Yep. Tyrann Mathieu, so there's Juan Thornhill right there, number 22. Mathieu is coming from depth, and he comes from a good amount of depth because he drops initially thinking that this is going to be a pass. This angle is awful. For a player of Tyrann Mathieu's caliber, all-pro caliber, he's solid. He's the honey badger. Horrible angle. Another missed tackle. He collides with Algerius Sneed, who's just trying to make a play and get off a block, poor dude. And then Gordon houses it. Another example, again, where at this point in the game, the Broncos have been leading on Kansas City over and over, play after play. And I know this Bills team is a pass-first Josh Allen team, but the Bills all of a sudden have this pivot in their offense. They have a physical, nasty run game that they can operate with and that they can use. And so even though it's a Josh Allen offense, the Bills can play like this, like what Denver did against Kansas City, like what other teams have done against Kansas City. And now we're going to show some clips from the Bills' wildcard victory against the New England Patriots. We went over some of these in the film room, but I wanted to bring some of them back to highlight how the Bills can play games like this. So here you've just got, I can watch Dawson Knox block on the edge every single day.
Yeah, they're
Knox
money.
and Gilliam, they're fantastic. And, I called it out earlier, right? What did Noah Fant do to Melvin Ingram? I talked about how Dawson Knox is even better at that. Fant was able to kind of contain and seal off Ingram. Knox doesn't even just seal off Jamie Collins here. He drives him. We talked about it he finishes him off. He drives him inside. Singletary makes a defensive back miss in the hole, has to make another man come over and tackle him, a la Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams against the Chiefs defenders in some of those clips we just showed.
This is the same exact concept as the last one that he scored on. Gordon scored on. This is the same exact concept.
That's exactly right. Like, they are using these concepts against the Chiefs, the Broncos that have been successful against the Chiefs all year. The Bills can do that. Same type of thing. Same type of that was funny. I saw that comment that came up, the Pringle with the chips on his shoulder. The Bills can do that, and I want that from the Bills. Having this pivot, it shouldn't just be something, okay, we can go to the run when we need to. In a game like this against a Chiefs defense that's vulnerable against the run, that has pass rushing preferred defensive linemen running at them with these type of physical attacking runs, play after play. It's beautiful. And then the Bills using double teams getting to the second level. We saw Denver do that time and time again. Here we have the counter tray touchdown for Devin Singletary. Again, Sorensen, Tyrann Mathieu, Charvarius Ward, all these defensive backs. Again, Chiefs play with light boxes 60% of the time, and 72% of the time they have 5 or more defensive backs on the field. Make those DBs have to tackle you, and you do that by getting physical and executing up front and making them have to do that. Here is another run from the Bills. We get Devin Singletary here. This one just really highlights a couple of things. We get a really nice reach block and seal from Deion Dawkins on the outside. We get really strong blocking on the edge from Gabriel Davis and Reggie Gilliam. And then this is the ability of Devin Singletary to make something, right? We saw Melvin Gordon on a couple of those runs make something out of nothing and make some plays. Here, he sees that Morse hasn't gotten to Dante Hightower yet, so he gives a little hesitation, makes Hightower have to change his angle. that allows our Prince Mitch Morse to get around and get a block. Singletary with his smooth lateral agility pops back outside and gets up fielding and makes something out of nothing. The Patriots defensive backs on the outside on Gilliam and Davis are caught in the spin cycle. Again, what are the Bills doing here? Pin and pulls, physical runs, gap runs, something they did 48% of the time from weeks 14 through 18 when they had the second most rushing yards in the entire NFL. And the only reason they didn't was because Rashad Penny for the Seahawks balled out. And it shows what has worked against the Chiefs. The Bills can do that same thing, and they've been doing it against other teams. And this one, last one here that we got, I showed a couple of clips of the Chiefs not maintaining rush integrity, not being in their lanes, and how Drew Lock was able to take advantage of that. Well, Josh Allen is third high to keep Josh Allen in the pocket. We talked about it in the film room on Tuesday. You have Juwan Bentley looping around to, there you go, you're highlighting him right there. You got Hightower spiking inside, and you've got Bentley, who's going to do almost kind of like that fish hook. He's going to loop around. On the other side, the Patriots dropped Matthew Judon to have him kind of be like a little spy or rusher to be able to contain Allen from that side. So you've got Bentley looping around the right side. Josh sees it, doesn't pull the trigger on the Dawson Knox throw, and then because he sees Bentley free there is like, okay, forget the right. I'm going to the left. Now he's got this soft edge because there's nobody there. He evades Godchow. Judon cannot stop him in space, and Josh Allen is off to the races, right? If Kansas City is going to rush free with the design of just trying to get to the quarterback, it's going to end badly for them because a team like the Patriots, who I know what the Bills did to them in the wild card, the Patriots defense is a good defense, and they're well coached, and they're well schemed, and they're well versed. And they were aiming by design to keep Josh Allen in the pocket, and they could not. And the Chiefs don't operate like that. They rush free. They like to get upfield. They lose rush lanes and integrity just by how they naturally play, let alone the Patriots doing it, and they were trying to stop Josh Allen. So I wanted to tie all that together with those first couple of slides. Thank you very much. Those first couple of slides to show how you can impact the Chiefs' run defense from a regular, prototypical run perspective, using your running backs, gap runs, zone runs, running the ball regular. But then also their propensity of not maintaining rush lanes and not maintaining integrity in their pass rush and allowing all those yards to QBs this year, both on design runs and scrambles. Given what the Bills have in Josh Allen, I think it's going to be another one of those days where he uses his legs in the scramble game, maybe some QB powers, all that stuff. There's a lot on the table from a running perspective, given how the Chiefs play and given where their vulnerabilities are there.
Yeah, and you're going to get those explosive plays from Josh Allen. You got to remember that last play that we just broke down, that was, I think, the first drive. That was early in the game, which is a tendency for the Bills and Brian Daboll. They, especially in these big games, if you guys remember in that Week 5 matchup, on that first drive, it was Josh Allen that scored on a counter bash run. You had a double team with Darrell Williams and Spencer Brown off the right side of the offensive line. They created that vertical displacement right at the Chiefs, and Josh kept the ball, and he ran in for a touchdown. A really elusive and great vision run from Josh Allen. Daboll and the staff, they love to establish him as, not just a mobile quarterback, but a quarterback that can really take it to the house on any given play. You saw it on that scramble outside of script. Obviously, he didn't pull the trigger to Knox. He scrambles off the soft edge to the left side, but you see when he gets into that open field, he can do some damage. He can swing field position, and really, that was a home game. But if he's able to do that at Arrowhead, that will really get things rolling for the Bills offense early in this game. And I expect it. It's something everyone should expect, that they are going to show some different quarterback run looks, designed runs for Josh Allen, some of those counter bashes with maybe even McKenzie in the backfield, which we broke down early in the week with. Those type of plays that establish him. I'd even like to see some more wrinkles and see what Daboll has up his sleeve in this game, because I'm getting excited thinking about it. And this was an awesome film room. We appreciate everyone joining us here. And it's going to be, hopefully it's going to be a fun game for both sides. Both fan bases are both proud. They are fanatics through and through. And some of the better tradition as far as the Chiefs and Bills go, and, longstanding history when it comes to teams and organizations and owners and whatnot. So thanks for everyone joining us in the film room. Anthony, it's been a long week, man. You've produced a lot of content, as has everyone at Cover One. So what do you have left, if anything? And if not, let everyone know where they can find your show every week or where they can replay your show from last night.
So find me on Twitter at pro__ant. That's pro 2_ANT. I'm the host of Disguise Coverage live every Wednesday at 7 p.m. You can find that on YouTube right now. You can find it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere and everywhere you find your podcasting apps. I had Matt Lane on from the KC Sports Network. We went into a matchup breakdown of the most important matchups that will decide Bills Chiefs. A lot of great content for there. As always, you can find me here as one of the two co-hosts in the Cover One film room with Mr. Eric Turner. I am tired. This was so the post game was on Saturday night, so I don't count that. So we had the film room Tuesday. I had Disguise Coverage last night. I had a guest appearance on another podcast last night. Got the film room tonight. I only have one more show left. That's the Cover One playoff extravaganza that has tons of fantastic guests, including we got Mr. Sal Capaccio. We got Ken Swanson from the KC Sports Network. A lot of great stuff in tomorrow night's show. So that's my last show of the week. I am burned out. I am tired, but I am energized by the excitement I have for this game. And it's a huge week. And I also want to echo your sentiments too, we kind of put this, together at the, yesterday and kind of last minute, the 11th hour, and then put the word out. But the comments have been fantastic tonight. The live viewership, the attendance, the kind words and the encouragement that we always get for the film room. I really appreciate the hell out of everybody for supporting the film room like this and Cover One as a whole. We've had a lot of growth this year, and we wouldn't have had any of it without all the support from everybody. And and then you obviously as well, being the godfather and the head of all of his. So, cheers to you, Mr. Eric.
I appreciate it, man. So if you guys missed the perfect game from the Bills against the Patriots, as Anthony said, we did a film room the other night on that. It was a doozy. Obviously, damn near perfect game from Josh Allen and the Bills offense. So if you missed that, go ahead and go take a look at it. It was it's got a bunch of breakdowns, kind of like what you saw here. And also earlier in the week, I had a sit-down film room with Isaiah McKenzie. As I just said, we talked about his role in the Bills offense, his value and speed to the Bills offense, and how the Bills, could use some of the plays that they use in the Patriots game in the wild card round and, throughout the year against the Chiefs, especially against a team that likes to play a lot of man coverage. So it's something that Dable started incorporating more as the season went on, kind of saved some of that, those things till later in the year when the games really mattered and then offense started clicking. I don't think it's an accident that's the case as they use the McKenzie more. So if you missed that, that content, make sure to get to the Cover One YouTube channel after this show and, eat up that content. And again, every day we have some content for you guys here on YouTube. We have written content on the website, so make sure to take advantage of that. And if you're not on our Slack channel, if you're not a premium member, make sure to subscribe. And, as soon as you subscribe as a premium member, I send you an email link and you get to join the Cover One community, our Slack channel, where we talk football all day. We talk analytics, we talk film, we talk nonsense, just general conversation. We have channels for everything. We have content for everybody. So that's Anthony Prohaska from Disguise Coverage. I'm Eric Turner. Enjoy the game this Sunday. Enjoy the games this weekend. We'll see you next week.